So today we're going to continue with writing equations for different situations, and we're going to look specifically at equations that have to do with perimeter. So before we jump into writing equations, we want to talk about and remind ourselves what perimeter is. So you already saw some of these on some of your homeworks, and maybe you were confused. We did cover this in the expressions unit, so we wrote expressions for perimeter. So now we're just going to write it as an equation, which, if we think back, expressions don't have an equal sign, just like 2x plus 1, and an equation has an equal sign, so 2x plus 1 equals 11 or whatever. Okay, makes it an equation. So now we're just going to add an equal sign and actually be able to solve for different things, either the sides or we'll be solving for the perimeter itself. Okay, so just to get us started, to remind us what perimeter is so that we're not confusing it probably with area if we were going to have some confusion. Perimeter is the distance around the outside of an object. So doesn't matter what shape it is, we're adding up all the sides to get a perimeter. Okay, distance around the outside. So if the sides of a rectangle are 6 and 10, what's the perimeter? So one mistake answer would be to say 60. If you multiplied the 6 and the 10 and you got 60, that's the area. So we don't want area. Area is the space on the inside of the shape. So perimeter would be outside. You got to add them all up. Another mistake answer would be to say 16. Where you just added these two numbers together. Problem there is this is a rectangle. There's 4 sides and you've only added 2 of them. So it always helps to draw a picture, and I would highly recommend for all of these types of problems we draw pictures. So the sides are 6 and 10, so the smaller side is 6, the bigger side is 10. And we know since it's a rectangle, if this side's 6, so is this side. And if this side's 10, so is this side. So if I'm going to find the perimeter, I'm going to add up all these sides. So if I actually wanted to write it out, which you don't have to here, but perimeter equals just all the way around. 10 plus 6 plus 10 plus 6. Add them all up. So if we grouped them together, we got 20, and you've got 6 and 6 is 12. So the 20 and the 12 together, the perimeter here is 32. Now some of you can probably just do that in your head, and that's fine. We just want to make sure we understand that perimeter is the distance around the outside, and you're going to add up the sides. So even if they're expressions, even if they're not a number, like 6 and 10, if it's an x or a 5x plus 2 or something like that, we're still adding them up to find the perimeter. So number 2, write an equation that can be used to solve for the perimeter of a square. So you want to think about, what do I know about squares? I know that all the sides are equal. Now if I'm not given any of those side lengths, I'm not given the perimeter. Okay, letter A will start to, but the first part of this question is just to write an equation for the perimeter of a square, any square in the world. So what's special about a square is that all the sides are the same. So I don't know what this side length is, so I call it x. But if that's x, I know this is also x, the same number. Remember, x just represents a number. And since it's a square, not only are the opposite sides equal, but these sides are also equal. If this was a 10, all the sides are 10 because it's a square. So perimeter is adding them all up. So I'd have to add x plus x plus x plus x. And ideally you want to simplify that. We don't want x plus x plus x plus x. You just want to write p equals 4x. That's the equation. There's an equal sign. Equation for the perimeter of a square, because you're going to take whatever the side length is and you're going to times it by 4. So if the side length was 10, you could do 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, or you could just do 4 times 10. Take the side and times it by 4. Okay, so there's the equation with an equal sign for the perimeter of a square. So now it says use the equation. That's key. A lot of you are going to want to just get the answer however which way your brain works, but we're really practicing using the equation. So taking what we just built and applying it. So find the perimeter of a square. So find P. So our answer will say P equals, that has a side length of 5. So if we break down all these equations that we're working on, there's 2 variables, and eventually they just give you one of them, you plug it in, and you find the other one. So in this question, they're either going to give you perimeter and ask you to find x, which is the side length, or they're going to give you the side length, which is x, and ask you to find P for perimeter. So this one says find perimeter if the side length is 5. So x is 5. So we're going to start with p equals 4x. Start with your equation. Replace the variable that they've given you. They've given me the side length being 5, so we're going to replace x with 5, and then you just multiply. So perimeter equals 20. Now, a lot of you would just get that in your head. You do 5, 5, 5, 5, but it says use the equation, so we need to show that we actually plugged into the equation that we built up here. Number 3, write an equation that solves for the perimeter. Here's the situation. A rectangular rug. Draw the picture. As soon as they start talking about a shape, draw it. Rectangle. 3 times longer than it is wide. Now, we don't know any of the lengths. You can't call one of the sides 3. I know that number's in the question, but it's not telling you the side is 3. It's just telling you one of these sides is 3 times longer than the other one. It's 3 times longer than it is wide. So if we just look at the picture and examine, we've got small sides and we've got large sides. Okay, so the longer of the two sides is 3 times the size of the smaller one. So if this one was 10, this one's 30. If this was 100, this one's 300. It's 3 times the size. If this was 2, then this is 6. But we don't know what the sides are. Okay, so we always have to start with calling something x or calling something our variable. So in this case, your best bet is to call the smaller sides x and then relate the bigger sides to that. So we don't know what the bigger sides are, but we do know it's 3 times the size of x, or 3 times the size of the smaller side. So 3 times the size is 3x. So if I gave you x, if I told you what the small side was, you would multiply it by 3 to get the longer side. It's 3 times the size. So if I wanted to write an equation that represents the perimeter, perimeter again means you added up all the sides. So 3x plus 3x plus x. And ideally you want to simplify. So this is a 3x and a 1x and a 3x and a 1x. So if you combined all of those, 3 and 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, plus another 1 is 8. So the simplified version of this says p equals 8x. And you can jump directly to that. I don't need to see the long one written out. Ideally, I want to see a picture. Okay, that helps. And then you're going to add up all the sides. And if you can just add those up in your head without writing out this full expanded version and just go straight to p equals 8x, that's fine. Now letter B, use the equation. So we're always building an equation and then using it, which means your work needs to show this equation. So let's just write it down to start out with. P equals 8x. We're starting with that. They're going to give us one of these two letters, either the perimeter or the width, the smaller side length, and then they're going to ask you to solve for something else. So it says use the equation to find the side lengths. So we're trying to find the side lengths. We're trying to find x. We don't have x, we're trying to find it. If the perimeter of the rug is 192, so that's the information they gave you. They told you what p was. It's 192. So you're going to replace it with the number. You're going to leave x alone because we don't know what it is. We don't know the side length. We just know perimeter. But now we can use that information to figure out what these side lengths are. So you want to get x by itself. You're going to divide. So 192 divided by 8. You get 24. And now we're not done. Okay, so be careful. Just because you got x equals 24, you've done everything right. You're just not finished. We want to find the side lengths, plural, so both sides. So not just one. We found one of them, it's 24. We need to find the other side. So part of my answer is 24, but part of my answer is another number. So if x is 24, look at your picture. The smaller side is 24. The bigger side, we know, is 3 times the size. So we have to take the x, which is 24, and times it by 3. You can use a calculator. So 24 times 3 is 72. So you can double check your work here, and I would suggest you always do that. If you had a rectangle and the sides were 24 and 72, the other side would be 24, the other side would be 72. And if you can visualize this, you don't even need to draw the picture, but add those up and make sure that you actually get 192 for the perimeter. If you added these sides up and you don't get 192, well, then you know you messed something up and you can go back and you can fix it. So once you state, here's my answer, here are the two sides, well, make sure it makes sense. If they do add up to 192, you know you got it. All right, number 4. A picture frame's width is 2 inches less than its length. So first of all, we're talking about a rectangle when we're talking about a picture frame. You may say, well, what if it's a square? I hear you, but they already told you one of the sides is 2 inches less than the other. So we're talking about a rectangle. Now before we even write it in the picture, because it does matter where we put them, we're going to have to express one of the sides as 2 inches less than the other. Now, we're always going to call one of the sides x or a different letter. The letter itself doesn't matter. But we're going to give a variable to one of the sides and then relate the other one to it. So the other side is going to be 2 inches less than x. Think about how that's going to look. So 2 inches less than x, you're going to take whatever x is and you're going to minus 2 from it. So you're going to have one side as x and one side as 2 inches less than x, x minus 2. So as I go to place this in my picture, I want it to make sense. Truth is, you would still get this question right even if you didn't put them in the right spot. But we want this to make sense. Which one of these represents a bigger number? So there's more going on here, but if I started with x, let's just say x was 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. So this is 10 and this is 8. So x minus 2 is actually the smaller sides. So when I come to put it in the picture, I actually want to put x minus 2 on those two sides and x here. And most students just get in the habit of always putting x on these sides. And so their picture won't make sense. Now, we're going to end up adding them up. So it really doesn't matter. If you put this here, you're still going to get the answer right. But let's make it make sense. Why not? So now we want to write the equation that solves for perimeter. So perimeter is always equal to all of these added up. So if I wrote out the long expanded version, you would say x plus another x plus x minus 2 plus another x minus 2. Now we don't have to write out the expanded form. We can go straight to the simplified version. So you can do it here, you can do it here, but you've got an x, an x, an x, and an x. If I combine all of those, x, 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 that's 4x. Now, I can't just leave it there. I've got to account for these other numbers. I've got a minus 2 and a minus 2. So if I put the minus 2 and the minus 2 together, spent a lot of time simplifying. A minus 2 and a minus 2, it's like a negative 2 and a negative 2, is a negative 4 or a minus 4. So here's my simplified equation. Perimeter equals 4 times x minus 4. So now let's use it. The perimeter of the frame is 28 inches. P is 28 inches. What are the length and the width? So just like we did up here, we're going to have to find two values. Up here we found the two sides to be 24 and 72. We need two answers here, length and width. So all you're going to do is you're going to plug into this equation, given the information. So 28 goes in for P. So let's start with the equation. Perimeter equals 4x minus 4. Plug in for P, so P becomes a 28. And solve your little two-step. Get x by itself. So add 4. And you get 4x equals 32. To get x by itself, you're going to divide. And so you get x equals 8. Great work so far. We're not done yet, though, because we need the length and the width. So 8 is one of those. But which one? It's the x. So if we redid this picture for a second, the x is 8. So if I was labeling my picture, those two sides are 8. So that's part of my answer. Now, the other piece here is either going to be 2 more than it or 2 less than it. Go back to your picture. It said x minus 2. So it's 8 minus 2. So it's going to be 6. So I think my answers are 8 and 6. I'm going to double check myself and make sure that they actually do have a perimeter of 28 if those are the sides. So I'm going to add up these sides. 8 and 8 is 16. Plus 6 is 22. Plus another 6 is 28. Okay, so I know that it's right. Every once in a while, if you got 8 as your first answer and you said, oh, one is 2 less than the other, you might say the other one's 10. And say 8 is the one that's less, 8 and 10. But if you added up 10 and 10 and 8 and 8, you wouldn't get 28, you get 36. So then you know it's wrong and you need to go back and fix it. So 8 and 6 would be my final answers there.